Cumberland Farms coffee, 99 cents any size, hot or iced, plus applicable tax. Close to 20 million Americans. What's up, everybody? Episode number 4, and I'm inside the house today. Fortunately, it's kind of nippy outside. Sending this link again to the doctor. Him and I had a sound test this morning. 92.5 The River, Boston's independent radio. So he should be joining any minute. His sound is good. His health is better. And so nothing but positive things. I'm not for sure how the sound is if the radio is up too loud. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit more. And we're waiting for the doctor to join us. So, well, what did we talk about last week? Last week, we talked about cannabis, as we do every week. Some of the key things that we spoke about was well, we dove into the doctor's website, cannabisinternational.org. We opened up the patent that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services had since the early 2000s as cannabinoids as neuroprotectants, and then there was another word there. We opened up the DEA website, the Schedule 1 cannabis classified as a substance that has no recognized medical value. And here comes the doctor. All right, doctor, we are live and we are on, we are streaming. I gave a little bit of a backdrop as far as talked about what we had mentioned last week in the podcast when you weren't here. And I went into your website and we opened up the patent, the government patent that has since expired. We opened up the DEA's website. We opened up the FDA's website. We opened up some of the current laws and kind of dove into the, I guess to say it politely, the hypocrisy within society surrounding cannabis. So that was last week. And now this week, we've got you back again. And you're doing better. You want to, I'm not for sure how we're wanting to move forward with this episode, but I know we're going to talk about obviously cannabis. But so why don't you want to say something?
Something? I'm actually better probably on answering questions at this point. I'm still kind of coming out of the brain fog.
Yeah. So last week you weren't doing good, and you had, I heard you had a fever, and you're not for sure what ailment that you're suffering from.
Yeah,
so,
whatever it is, it's winding down, and so that's the best news.
Yes. Very good. I know that Kristen and we shared some emails back and forward on how we're going to move forward with setting out the invites to bring on guest speakers. And I suppose it would be good for us to talk about that. We have the public service announcement that needs to be finished. And there's a possibility that we might move the timing from 12 to 1, which would it gives me more flexibility with the family. And now that it's colder, I can't go outside, and I'm on this in-between period where I don't have a designated studio, and there's not a whole lot of room on the inside of my home. So 1 o'clock for now, it just fits better for me. Does that work good for you?
It does.
Okay. So that's one update. Now the PSA was, from what I understand, there was some script that needed to be edited, and we needed to get a final draft or whatnot. And now with that PSA at the radio stations, are they going to put out the announcement in their? Are they going to be saying it, or do we need to record something and then that's going to be played back?
Yes, I call up and leave a 2-minute announcement PSA, and then they take that and interpose it during the programming across the next week or two.
So how do you want to where do you see us being able to attend people for next week? I mean, well, I guess, how can I say it? So we're going to invite guests on, and are we going to give them like a 30 minutes or a 1 hour, or how are we going to structure it? What do you have in mind?
I was kind of thinking that they would be topical and I think brief initially until we see how it goes in terms of content and the amount of information that we need to kind of fill that period. I think it's better to have relatively short, sweet, intense kind of clips that people can look to, rather than really long, rambling kind of communications that people may or may not be interested in following. But if you have someone come calling in and I've got a history of diabetes, or I've got a history of heart disease, then you have an issue. You can talk about what they've done before, what's worked and not worked, and if there are people responding from this end, they're likely to have been familiar with raw cannabis and quite likely are actually using it currently. And so that would actually bring out a whole new element, which is going to be different, meaning someone who is familiar, comfortable, and currently using raw cannabis.
I can hear the chickens in the background.
That'd be Heye the rooster. He's making his presence known. Country living.
Yeah, well, you're blessed. You're a blessed man, and you've had to pay for it. So raw cannabis, and we're gonna focus on stories from people on that subject. Raw cannabis as a vegetable, and we're gonna kind of laser in on that.
And in particular, to be a bit more therapeutic cannabis. I mean, these are people generally with medical problems, who are familiar and have been for 10, 15 years with its ability to provide anti-inflammatory and pain relief and symptomatic mitigation, and sometimes even the condition. They're oftentimes able to reduce their reliance on other forms of pain meds or other forms of medication. So we'll be able to hear from people who've had some long-term experience.
Right. Yeah, that's what we want. We want to bring in people who have a long-term experience. Now, there are other people in the cannabis, I guess you could say cannabis activists, uh, people who are teaching cannabis as a way to prevent sickness and even heal themselves, cure diseases. There are people in the cannabis circle community. And one of the persons who I spoke with this past week is a pretty prominent person in the community, and they're telling me that, and this is one of the things that I want to dive into with these stories on the raw cannabis aspect, because he tells me that if anybody has prevented a disease or healed themselves, cured themselves with raw cannabis as opposed to Delta 9 THC with all the decarboxylized, did I say that right?
Decarboxylated.
Yeah, it's a mouth.
Decarboxylation.
Yeah. Well, he basically says that if somebody says that they had healed themselves with just eating it as a raw vegetable or juiced vegetable, then they were just quote unquote lucky. And that the real powerful aspect is in the Delta 9 THC. And so I asked him, I said, well, does that mean that you're saying that I should be giving my children Delta 9 THC? And he says, yes, most definitely. And that's kind of it's kind of something that, I have a hard time believing that Delta 9 THC is something I should be giving to my children every day, based upon my experience with the plant.
Well, it depends on the dose that you're talking. I mean, there is Delta 9 in raw cannabis, and Delta 9 has a lot of very important roles, but the doses that you need to effectuate that are comparable to what you have in raw cannabis. So it's there, it's just not psychoactive. So the question is, are you talking about enough THC to get you to that 10,000 microgram psychoactive dose, or you're talking about 100 or 200 micrograms, which is what you get in a dietary form.
Okay, so when I say Delta 9 THC, I'm talking about the THC acid that's been heated, so then now it's psychoactive.
Well, it's only psychoactive at a certain dose. In raw cannabis, there is decarboxylated THC. There's THC and there's THC acid. The ratio in some strains runs over 100 to 1. So there is going to be a lot of THCA per molecule of THC. But THC is there and of sufficient amount to be very effective at what it does for every other animal for the last 34 million years. I mean, it's there, it's effective, it's just not psychoactive. And psychoactive is in the domain of humans with eating and all kinds of an ability to elevate their dose from 100 micrograms to 10,000.
100 micrograms, 10,000. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm thinking that the person was referring to very large amounts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
primarily, the psychoactive. I mean, some people are into, if they, a 10,000 microgram dose is what they call 1X. And many people are into, medical edibles that have 2X, 3X, 4X would have 10, 20, 30, 40,000 micrograms per cookie or brownie. They're I've heard of 12 way, which would be a 12X. I mean, they can run any type of a range, but obviously if you get much above 1X for the average person who is not a very heavy daily user, if they stumbled into an edible that had 40,000 micrograms, they would probably be quite uncomfortable if they inadvertently ate a 4X brownie. Other people say, well, you buy a 4X brownie, you cut it into quarters, and then you got your 10 milligrams, and so you have 4 doses. Um, so that takes you back to that 10,000 microgram kind of standard psychoactive dose.
Yeah, so I see. Well, what I want to focus on getting out of our work is what how do we dive into talking about feeding this to our kids?
I
You
think the
mentioned.
kids, the children thing, I think would probably push a lot of people's comfort zone. I mean, I think everyone maybe has thought about it or has their own position on that. But in general, they look at cannabis as, an 18-year-old type plus because they're thinking psychoactive, they're thinking intoxicated, they're thinking, that type of thing. Um, Very few people are thinking about cannabis as a non-psychoactive leafy green vegetable with, they refer to it as ultra low dose THC. I kind of dislike that misrepresentation because it is not ultra low dose. It's, in my mind, physiologic dose. It's the amount that you do need, can need, and is beneficial physiologically. So to call that ultra low is only because they're thinking that a 1X 10,000 microgram dose is the bright line. If you're below that, then you're not having enough to kind of create that effect. And in their mind, that effect is an indication that you're dosing correctly or adequately. But I disagree. And I think whether or not, as soon as you even start talking about children using raw cannabis, you're going to bring in the helicopters.
Well, I've got some helicopters coming, and it seems like that they're, they seem to be friendly so far, but definitely got some ears perked up. Um, we have family therapists, and I brought it up with them, and the family therapists are they're born abroad, and they're both from Latin America. One of them's older, and they're not necessarily opposed to it. I think other cultures understand that the plants are food, and so I guess it's kind of a unique helicopters that I got coming in. Plus, there's a meeting tomorrow here in my home. I've been saving these. Here, I'm going to grab them real quick. That's strange. Well, I've been doing some organizing, and I think maybe my wife might have helped me move. Maybe that's it. No, that's not it. Anyway, so I've got the. Yeah, I guess maybe my wife had moved it. but we have the hemp seeds, and starting off with the idea of hemp seeds, hemp sprouts. That's kind of like the most non-threatening
Yeah.
way to begin to break into this
I
type
mean,
of
you could
stuff.
we could do a review of hemp snack food, cereals, candy bars, chips. If you go to a health food store, you could come back with a dozen different snacks that have hemp seed protein in it. Edestin is a globular protein, one of the most digestible plant proteins. Um, and so it's an excellent source of protein, complete amino acid sequence. So it's really it's quite a high quality source. And so you can put that in your cereal for all members of the family. You can have snack bars, and so you go from that then into using the seed to make a hemp oil. And it also has an amazing ratio between the omega-3s, omega-9s. It really is a well-balanced, high-quality oil. And
Yeah, hemp seed oil.
yeah, and so we could do a review of health food products from hemp oil and hemp chips and hemp cereal and hemp candy bars and hemp snack food. Um, and so that really is all of, pretty much the world has embraced the,
Right. Yeah, it's very common.
yeah.
I think that most people are pretty much aware that hemp is not psychoactive. So I did another thing. I did some. I tried to find some reading, some information to read on the cannabinoid content in sprouts, and I couldn't find much. I know we talked about that book, Marijuana Chemistry, and I haven't ordered the book yet, but I've done some reading, and what I have found has just been on some websites, people who are promoting hemp. And one person in particular mentions that the highest concentration for cannabinoids in the hemp plant is just before it's flowering, or right as it's flowering. Um,
In terms of leaf content, it's
Leaf
classically
content.
thought that there's 0 in the first month and begins to build in the second month and continues to build through the third month, and then peaks between day 80 and 90 before the plant goes into flower. But there's that one Eastern European study which suggests that there is this isolated, very sharp, narrow spike in the middle of that first month. It does fall off again and goes more or less back to 0. So it's easy to dismiss the whole first month as having, 0 phytocannabinoids, but I place great faith in that one study
So
that's
so the hemp sprouts, I guess it's yet to be determined as far as what type of level of cannabinoids there might be. You haven't.
yeah, I think there are some people out there that are beginning to study it. It's a fairly simple test. I don't have the resources to reproduce that study. I mean, if you could do 3 GCMS analyses, you could
How does
find
it?
out.
What's the name of that again?
If you could just do some either gas chromatograph or ideally HPLC, high pressure liquid chromatography. The HPLC will show you the ratios and amount of the medicinal acidic cannabinoids as well as the decarboxylated neutral cannabinoids. So it'll show you the amount of CBD acid and the amount of CBD, the amount of CBG acid, CBN acid, CBC acid, as well as the neutrals, as well as the variants. So THCV will show up and be isolated. So essentially, it allows you to kind of get out
What was the name of that? What was the
a
name of
better
that first
snapshot.
test?
Well, GC, a gas chromatograph coupled mass spectrometer, is the kind of older classic. There are portable machines you can take out in the field. It's a much older analysis or analytic means. The HPLC came after that, and so the GCMS is involves heat in its. You heat it up and inject it, and what that does is decarboxylates it. So the process of the analysis will create higher levels of CBD and higher levels of THC through the heat involved in the analytic process.
And
So
then
it's
the
a,
HPLC does not heat anything up.
yeah, it keeps it cold, and so it analyzes and doesn't decarboxylate. And so it'll tell
So
you
we want to go with the HPLC. Is that what most people are using when they're testing like their CBD products?
well, it depends on, it really depends on the level of analysis. If all you're looking for is CBD, you're going to want to decarboxylate the CBD acid because it'll raise your levels of CBD dramatically. And so if you're looking for CBD, you're most likely going to take your sample and heat it at a certain temperature for a certain period of time to more or less fully decarboxylate it. And then you say, well, I got a 20% CBD plant. In reality, the plant started out as probably 21% CBD acid and 0.5% CBD in the living plant. But if you're, or in whatever product that you have, the ratio is going to be higher in the acidic form. But if you heat it, you decarboxylate it, and then suddenly you're going to show your CBD going from half of a milligram to 10, 20, and a dramatic increase. And if you're interested in promoting CBD, you're going to want to decarboxylate any sample you have to evidence the actual amount of CBD possible through heating.
You don't believe everybody does that, though. I mean, I don't think everybody does that. There could be some people.
Well, if you're promoting, I mean, if you're finding people are buying the product because of the amount of CBD, they're looking for, oh, look, there's X amount of CBD in my candy bar or it's my potato chip. CBD has a lot of common recognition, a lot of recognition of value. You ask that same lay group, what's your interest in CBDA? They're not likely to say, well, it's very interesting. It's got a lot of interfaces with the oncologic and cancer loops and cancer production and migration. And so, very few people have as much education or knowledge about cannabidiolic acid. But CBD is really becoming it's in sports drinks, it's in parlor drinks. I mean, it's in your facial cream. Yeah. And so people, if you're buying $1,000 of biomass, you're not going to want the CBD held in the CBDA form because people aren't going to value that until they get a little more education.
Right.
That's our job.
So tomorrow, when our visitor comes by, I'm going to be showing her the seeds, and I'd sent them an email. She's actually a caseworker. She works for the Department of Children and Families. I sent her and her supervisor an email just giving them a heads up, kind of proactively, so that there's no surprises on their end, just in case somebody might. Part of it is just in case somebody might try to say, "Hey, Chris is getting his kids high," or the other is, I think that it's important for everyone to understand the value of cannabinoids, the endocannabinoid system. Last week I went to a doctor's visit, and my primary care doctor, and I asked the nurse, I said, did you guys by any chance learn anything about, I know this is a random question, but I'm into the subject, I told her, and did you guys learn anything in medical school about the endocannabinoid system? And she says, I've never even heard of it. And then I asked my primary care physician, and he said that I don't remember if he said he's never heard of it, but I know he'd never heard of you. He's never heard of anybody eating the plant raw. But when I told him about your story and how you have been telling people to drink, 3 to 4 ounces of raw cannabis juice daily to treat and prevent disease, I told him, I said, I kind of did this in a way to kind of plant the seed, but at the same time, just to also, double check myself uh, as far as how I'm going with this. I told him, I said, here, I'm going to write down. I'm going to write down his website. I'm going to write down his name. I want you to look into this. And, basically I just said, I want you to tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm really onto something, doctor. And I think maybe 99% chance I'm onto something, 1% chance I guess I could be crazy. But maybe it's both. And then the nurse, I told her, I wrote down on a different piece of paper before she left the room prior to the doctor coming in. I gave her a link to a TED talk that's seen on YouTube by a lady who she does an amazing job. I actually played back her video on the screen share last week's episode 3, and she's explaining how she's explaining how the ECS doesn't just modulate the immune system, it actually regulates all the systems, and that it's the number one most important thing that should be talked about in medical school. Which I don't think she said it like that. She said it differently, but it was a very powerful speech. It was only 15 minutes, so I gave the nurse that, and I said, you're gonna be blown away. So you're gonna be blown away. Just look at it for yourself. All the information's there. And so I am I'm putting down some roots in the community. And I don't think that there's anybody who's in my circle of influence who isn't aware of the fact that, I talk about cannabis regularly. So for me, this is the hemp seeds that we're going to sprout. I want us to test these, and I want to begin building an understanding on the value in the cannabinoid content, because I'm even more convinced now that it's something that it's just the best thing that I can do for myself, and it's the best thing that I can show to all my loved ones, my family members, and so yeah, kind of a big thing going on. So next week, I would like to have some scheduled people to come on. I have a pretty strong feeling that after tomorrow's meeting with the caseworker who's coming, that I'm going to open up the bags of seeds. So I've kept them closed. I've kept the seal on everything. They're still in the package. The shipping package, other than the fact the shipping package has been opened, so that when I show it to her, there's not going to be any surprises. I'm trying to do the best I can to help bring everyone along on the story. But next week, I want to have on, if we can, 2 or 3 different guests. I know last week we talked about bringing on a couple people. One of them had to postpone. The other, I let him know that you weren't going to be on the show, so we postponed with him. So are you in contact with anyone in particular, or do we have to put out the PSA in order to begin scheduling somebody for next week's show?
Um, the PSA can be as simple as just an email from the office to the patients. The PSA is just, a glorified term for letting people know that I'm interested in interviewing people and kind of developing a library of conditions and how people use cannabis to manage that. So the quicker I get that out, the more likely we'll be we can get some results.
All right, so we're going to work on finishing that script today and getting all the information needed for that. So that'll be finished today. So that's one of the tasks that we want to get done. We'll probably, do you want to talk about those off while we're not streaming?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a matter of, grammar and sentence and, it's kind of.
Well, I've got yeah, we'll do that whenever we end the stream. We'll come back on and do that. We want to get that ready.
And I think the whole child thing, to me, it's safer to move into cannabis as a dietary essential with consenting adults, which are kind of a requirement for most places in terms of, and you need to be of a certain age because they're thinking, psychoactive intoxication, and they don't know how to. My child uses cannabis, they immediately go to your child getting high. And so they don't have the discrimination sufficient to say, there's a difference between grapes and vodka. And grapes are something that you can eat and have beneficial value and as a table food. And the other is you probably don't give vodka to your 3-month-old or your 3-year-old. But if they can chew and swallow and spit out seeds, then cannabis as food or grapes as food becomes a possibility. So to me, it would seem as soon as you mention children, you're going to bring in the rabid kind of anti-cannabis. You can't be doing this to our children, and I think it's if we talk about it's being a dietary essential for everyone, that kind of leaves that door open for individual discretion of, well, I'm going to keep vitamin E away from my child because I haven't heard whether or not it's cleared. But if children become a part of the conversation, they're going to be saying, what kind of studies do you have on children and developing nervous systems? And, it's just going to, they're going to ask a million questions that don't have answers, and they're not likely to be satisfied with many other classes of animals eat raw cannabis, and there appears to be no problems with them. And there probably have been no problems with humans that have eaten it. They just immediately default to psychoactive use. And every time a new person becomes involved and they hear children, they're thinking, oh my God, they're advocating children get high. And so I think we should just stick with kind of adults and people in general, and that kind of leaves the door open for individual kind of acceptance. Once we have some dietary nutritional analysis that supports it, and we submit it for recognition as a dietary essential, then we begin to look at, well, if it's a dietary essential, then it's important for people of all ages. I think if we get involved with younger children, or in fact anyone below the age of 18, we're going to have our hands full legally. And
21 here in Mass.
Okay, yeah, so 20. So what? According to the jurisdiction that one's using it, I just.
Yeah, well, I like what you're talking about, and I think that's something that's best. And that's what I'm going to explain to them, and I put that in the email. Is that I'm not going to be feeding them anything. We're going to be testing stuff, and so yeah, and so it might be a long time until it's kind of a recognized dietary essential.
It doesn't. If we had the money, it probably shouldn't take that long. I mean, there's nutritional analyses that
How much money?
I really don't know, but if you call a nutritional, school of education and find out what a nutritional analysis, wasn't the couple going to do a nutritional analysis?
Yeah, they promised to do some type of test. I'm not for sure which one, Patty and Bruce. And so
Yeah,
when the sprouts are at their 14 days,
10 to 14.
then that's when we're gonna uh, I guess ship them off to them, or maybe we'd want to ship them like 2 days before.
Yeah,
But
you'd want to.
once I open the package, I'll let them know, and then keep them up to date that it's coming, so that we don't lose the so we can hit that window of having it tested within that time frame.
And I'd almost sprout them wherever the analysis is going to be done. If they're in a university town and there's HPLC there that's familiar with and has the reagents and standards and is doing, phytocannabinoid analysis already, it just seems like it would make more sense to work with a lab that is very comfortable with, terpenocannabinoid analysis and has done it, and so it's just put it in the queue and we'll do that analysis. Would be a lot easier than trying to bring up to speed a nutritional school that is.
All right, so I'm gonna have to shop around and find the lab, and then Patty and Bruce, I'll let them know what we're doing, and so it seems like it's very possible that there's plenty of labs here right now.
Oh yeah, no, there's labs all over the East Coast and West Coast that are really cannabis labs, quote cannabis. I mean, they're involved in the binders, the receptors, the adjuvants, the interactions, and so there's a lot of study going on. So
what I'll tell the caseworker tomorrow is that we're gonna be sprouting the seeds, and then we're gonna be sending them to a lab to get a nutritional analysis, because it's dietary essential is the study, but until we know exactly what it is, it's only going to be, I'm an adult, I'm a consenting adult, I eat cannabis every day, and so I'll just make sure that they know that, and that we know we're not going to be giving it to my kids anytime soon, and that'll keep us clear of any type of unnecessary, you don't want to rub the cat the wrong way. So yeah.
And they're very protective, and they've heard a lot of, they'll come at you with a dozen articles of adolescents that were intoxicated all the time and interfered with their school performance or sports or their job performance. And so there's a lot of information out there that extensive, intense psychoactive use of cannabis may not be the thing that a pre-adolescent needs as they're trying to find their way in the world. And so there's that group, and that fear is not going to have a lot of tolerance for, but we use raw cannabis, it doesn't get you high, and that's okay. And they go home and they heat the leaf, and then they get high, and they go, well, it's pretty easy to switch one to the other. I mean, if you want to get high, it's you can take your raw leaf and boil it, and you will face plant, and so it's it's just, in my mind, it'd be best to establish that in its raw format it has this nutritional value, and advance towards that nutritional analysis and determination and then qualification, and then move it towards because if it's nutritionally important, then obviously it's important for everyone.
Right. Yeah, there are plenty of labs around here, and cannabis is a pretty common thing right now in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I can also say that there is a commission that's in charge of the Cannabis Control Commission. I think that's what it is. I think it's called the CCC, the Cannabis, if if I'm not mistaken. And I had called them up prior to us even starting anything with any podcast. And I asked them about juicing the raw leaves from these dispensaries that they have in their grows, because well, I asked him what's going on with the leaves, what's going on with the stalks, what happens in the process. And the way that the law is set up is they have to basically render it useless, and so it's ground up with waste product so that it's not worth anything when it's done. And so what I see there is an opportunity in the market, because if everything that you say is true, everything that we're going to be bringing people on to say is true, the science is true, then they're throwing away the most valuable, one of the most valuable things that humans have, and they just don't know it. And the Cannabis Control Commission, the guy that was in charge, I asked him, I said, have you ever heard of anybody drinking the juice raw to prevent disease? And he said, no, never even heard of it. So that's kind of shows a little bit as far as where the understanding is right now in the industry. So yeah, it's there's it could be very easy to set off a bad first impression at this point. And but I think that there is a lot of value in pursuing and doing what we're doing. So raw nutritional value, dietary essential, nutritional analysis. You mentioned HPLC ratios, terpenol, cannabinoid analysis. Did you say?
Yeah, so the terpenes are the aromatic 10 to 15 carbon. The cannabinoids are the 20-21 carbon. Put them together, and those are the terpenocannabinoids. So you're essentially looking at both the 10, 15, and 20 carbon molecules in the plant. They're independently quite powerful and then also quite synergistic on top of their individual value. So you really don't want to exclude the terpenes from the analysis and recognition as essential.
Right. Okay. Doctor, would you like to share more on your growth process and your understanding between the periods of when your friend who is a doctor says, hey, I'd like for you to look into the medical marijuana, until 5 years later you've reached a conclusion over that period that this is cannabis eaten raw is a dietary essential, the most important dietary essential that we have. Could you share for a few minutes how that happened? Dive into that a little bit.
Well, like I said, when this colleague, like I said, we went to medical school together. Our kids graduated from high school together. Known them pretty much all my life, but this was back in the early days, and asked if I would. And that was when California had the Medical Compassionate Care Act, and you had to have an approval, and he wanted me to sign an approval for his use of cannabis. This was before I had, really had anything other than recreational knowledge of what cannabis was about. And so I initially was like couldn't believe that he wouldn't turn to pharmaceutical science to treat his inflammation and pain and arthritides, and that he really thought that there was value in this plant. But his serious interest was what led me to begin looking at the science behind it. And you scratch that surface, and pretty quickly you're deep into decades-long research that shows that there's incredible value in many segments of this plant's biochemistry. So it very quickly led to reading articles and more articles, and each article's got another 50 at the back, and pretty soon you're kind of buried in the realization that how is it that I've missed this so long, and why is it not really common knowledge and common use, and why is this not recognized by those that are professors and students and doctorates of nutrition.
What was that like for you?
It was, it's like you say, it's hard to, once you kind of connect a couple of the dots, it's hard to imagine that everyone hasn't done that and it's not common knowledge, because there's just so much. I mean, there's 10,000 articles out there on some of the phytocannabinoids. It's hard to know how there can be that much basic science evidence and yet not common knowledge that, this is as important as vitamin C or vitamin D or vitamin E or vitamin A, and really is,
if not more important.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it's the more important, less important. It's important enough to be in the daily diet, and you don't need to exclude other important vitamins, but you certainly don't want to neglect this particular component of the nutritional system. And to know that there's that much science and yet it's not being advocated as a dietary essential is, it doesn't have the financial allure that other phytochemistry does.
That's probably one of the reasons, right?
I would say the major reason is that they would rather pull a molecule out and sell you a bottle of CBD and ship you a box of 50 of them, and it's portable, it's small, it's concentrated, it's highly valued or overvalued, and so they just soon isolate. My specialty is THCV, and my specialty is use in migraines versus my use in inflammatory bowel disease. And so they're carving out areas of interest and expertise, but no one seems interested in, why don't we just put this leafy green vegetable into our diet and see if that can support cell physiology across the body, and disease arises at the cellular level. If you support cellular function, you're going to be in a position to reduce problems before they occur, or as they occur, or as soon as they occur.
So it was really, the process was, your friend tells you about it, you begin to look into it, and then after about 5 years, you've read through so much scientific study that, you were even surprised that not everybody, it wasn't common knowledge, because it's information that's readily available to everybody, but yet it's not commonly understood.
Yeah, I'd contract that from 5 years to about 5 months. I mean, as soon as I started looking at it, you can't really look seriously at the subject and not quickly come to a conclusion that, well, there's a lot going on here and there's a lot of value. And I don't understand how this has been sidelined so long, given, they'll tell you that you need to eat the food pyramid and the elements that are important in diet, and what happens if you're deficient in vitamin C. Everyone can espouse the dietary deficiencies that occur with other dietary elements, and I just couldn't put it together in my mind how we understand that there are important elements, and that if you're deficient, there are medical problems that arise from that, and why, in this particular case, it's not identical, if not the pinnacle, the primary example of
Well,
deficiency.
maybe part of the reason is because these things take time. I mean, it took time for the discovery for many things, I imagine, in medicine before they became a common knowledge.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I mean, CBD was discovered a long time ago, and there's been knowledge of these elements. Like I said, currently 10,000, over 10,000 articles. I mean, there's enormous information. It's been around for decades.
Hmm.
Um, and so this is, I could accept that idea, maybe back in the late 50s or early 50s or something, but at some point you say, well, look at this, we can reduce the size of a myocardial infarction by over 50%. That ought to be of interest to somebody. It seems like someone would stand on a mountaintop and scream, you know.
Well, not everybody is gonna respond the same way, because there's so much stigmatism around the plant that a lot of people, they're just I think I can't speak for everybody, but from what I gather when I talk to some doctors about this stuff, it's kind of like the I talked to one doctor about it, and I told him about you, and I told him about the podcast, and he, I could see right away where his fear was that I was reckless in even wanting to find out whether or not it's accurate what you're saying, or accurate what other people are saying, or digging into the truth. But of course that doctor he's quite, he came from a country that has a very violent um, history, dictatorship history. So there's a possibility that he just shies away from controversy. But for the broad general public, I think the mom on Main Street, like you said before, there's nothing more. How did you say that on one of the previous podcasts? A parent whose child is having 300 to 400 seizures a day, they're very much interested and active in trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. You compare that to a medical professional who, he's happy where he's at. You know, you heard that song, "Don't Rock the Boat." You might tip the boat over, and don't rock the boat, baby. And so I think part of it's that screaming from a mountaintop is not for everybody. It never has been. Um, some people, they're just not. They're not. That's not their role. That's not their calling. And there's always a portion of people um, who shy away from controversy.
How many mothers do you know that don't care about the nutrition of their infant?
I mean, obviously, this is kind of a rhetorical, but yeah, I mean, I know I couldn't name one person who doesn't care about their kids.
And particularly their kids' nutrition. I mean, it's like, trying to get them. How many families struggle to make sure that there's a salad on the table once a day?
Well, I'm going to be
How
honest
many
with you,
families?
doctor. I'm going to be honest with you, doctor. Um, I lied. I know of people who would rather not know and would rather not push the envelope because of the way people might think about them.
But I mean, I was coming back at it from the idea of most parents take a position of, okay, wow, now I have a baby and I need to feed this baby, and if once they're stopped breastfeeding, they're going to need to be eating food, and maybe just eating fried food is not a good thing. Maybe we got to make sure that there's some vegetables and salad. And it seems like in Northern California, which is a pretty skewed sample, most women having children uh, took it upon themselves to learn a lot about the food that they were going to prepare for their child and make their own baby food. And so there's probably a more active participating group there. But I would believe that there's not a mother on the planet, unless they had real severe mental disorders, that doesn't really want to have their child have a healthy start. And um, you didn't want them to develop scurvy. You didn't want the child to develop rickets. You didn't
Well,
want them to
maybe
have bony
maybe
dysfunctions.
maybe mental disorder and or a combination of things could be more than um, could be more than that. Um, I spent many years in Honduras, and 40%, I think, is what the numbers were at the time. 40% of the population was illiterate, probably still is illiterate. I met many people who could not spell their own name. And so, of course, a mother and a father, any parent who's healthy, educated, there's an advantage there. But when you wrap up the stigmatisms, you wrap up uh, a person's own individual deficiencies, possible, mental disorder as well. It can be more complex. And but yeah, mental disorder is definitely part of what it could be. So it makes it yeah, not everybody's ready to push limits and say, I want what's best for my kid, no matter what anybody says. And that takes a level of autonomy. It takes a level of self-discipline, recognition of personal accountability. Um, and in developing nations, there's a lot more of that. It's more common to have those traits, but developing developed nations, but underdeveloped nations, where there's not access to reading and writing is not it's not a common thing, and $5 a day.
I mean, I'm not talking about intellectual grasp of the contents, but there's pretty much, it seems, the mothering instinct is to nurture, and nurture is recognizing, okay, I could feed the kid, the infant M&Ms, and give them nothing but M&Ms, and it'd be simple and easy, and buy a box, and do nothing other than give them candy every day. Pretty much, it's understood intuitively that um, that the child needs a range of things in their diet to be healthy.
Only to the person who understands that. I mean, there's people who don't get it, and
Yeah.
there's lots of people who don't get that. They're not at that level. So yeah.
Well, we'll bring them along anyways.
Well,
We'll put some information in the back of their candy bar, and they can read, okay, look at that, terpene cannabinoids, it meets 100% of the daily requirements. I'm not sure what that is, but it's in the candy bar, so I'll eat it.
really, I think one of the best ways to bring people up to date on anything is educating children, and and having the information in curriculums, textbooks, courses. And so that's kind of, in a way, that's kind of what we're setting the stage and paving the way for future trailblazers in that area with this, equipping this generation, the next generation, generations to come, if they have access to this content that we're building, because you know, it's going to take you and me. You know, we can talk on here all day long, but at the end of the day, if it's not being taught to the children aren't going to understand. And to expect a parent, you know, expecting all parents to seek out this information, yeah, it's just it's challenging. So really, it's a top down approach, and it's a bottom down. You know, and on the lower end is education with kids. The top end is educating people who are dedicated in these specific fields: nutrition, health, um, children, and bettering themselves, and bettering the future. And like I said, not everybody's on that caliber. There's an in between group that, you know, focusing on that in between group. Yeah, they're just going to have to come along for the ride, or, you know, just not pay attention, and, you know, that's never going to be something that they know about. But yeah, so it's 5 months instead of 5 years.
Yeah, it was very, you know, as soon as I got into my first article, there was a number of magazines. O'Shaughnessy's is a magazine of the cannabis clinicians in Northern California, and they used Todd Mickaria was the one who actually was involved in the Compassionate Care Act in California, and it included the phrase or for any other condition for which it provides relief. You know, so Todd was, you know, a very forward-looking physician who was able to affect the terminology in the Compassionate Care Act, and we all got together at his office down in the Bay. So I used to drive, you know, 3, 4, 5 hours at least once a month to meet with Bay Area and Southern Cal physicians, and they would all get together when we would have a, you know, 3 or 4 hour kind of discussion on cannabis. And so very quickly came into contact with some of the kind of forefathers of the area, and they had access to literature and magazines and articles, and we would review that together, and then I'd go home and go online.
I'm gonna pull that screen up. Compassionate Care Act, I searched here, and it's showing 2015, 2014, New York, South Carolina, Compassionate Care Act. Was this one of the first?
California, yeah, California, this one here. The one that has California in it.
(1996) California Proposition 215.
Yeah.
Here's the Wikipedia on it. 1 second.
Down there it says Todd Mickaria. You know, 10th line or 6th line down or something.
So you were, what is this? Is this what we're wanting to look at here?
Yeah, it was Todd Mickaria was, he was a fellow who expanded the scope of cannabis use, medical cannabis, and yeah, he's just, and I was sitting by his side when he was diagnosed with liver cancer. But he was just an amazing individual who, like I said, expanded the use to any other condition. So it has the cancer, cachexia, wasting, you know, the 8 common uses that many states restrict themselves to. But in California, it had those 8 and included the line, and any other condition for which it provides relief. And
Yeah,
with
it
that,
shows
you
here.
suddenly.
It shows here that he was a psychiatrist, and he was known as an outspoken advocate. He's regarded by some as the godfather or the the grandfather of medical cannabis movement in the United States, most especially So you were with this guy.
We would meet monthly. We
Wow.
would meet at his office with physicians would drive from Southern California, Los Angeles, up to San Francisco. I would drive from kind of near Oregon down to San Francisco, and we would meet at his office. And he really is an amazing man who really.
It says here he passed away in 2007.
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
So the interesting thing is that he was a psychiatrist, and that he authored the books, and so you would meet with him monthly. This was before he passed away, but after you was with him before he was diagnosed with a liver cancer.
Yeah, before he was ill, and I was with him on the day that he was informed that he had a very serious condition.
Yeah, a long battle with cancer. Yeah. I a member of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, it has all those characteristics.
It's amazing how a lot of this is just kind of all ties. A lot of people follow many of the same general perspective.
When Kristen came out to California, she came out to work with a fellow who was running for president of the Libertarian Party, and a potential candidate for federal government.
What was his name?
Steve Covey.
How do you spell his last name?
Kubby, I think. BB, just no I. Kubby.
Libertarian Party activist who played a key role in the drafting and passage of California Proposition 215. Hey, that's the same one we just looked up.
And Todd is the fellow who actually penned the law. I mean, he wrote the word, the language.
Wow. He authored 2 books on drug policy reform, The Politics of Consciousness, Why Marijuana Should Be Legal. Libertarian Party candidate for governor of California in 98. 0.9% of the vote. He was also a cancer patient. Is he still? Does it show? Yeah, he's still alive.
Still alive, quite ill.
73. He was born in El Paso, so he's probably definitely Hispanic descent. He looks as it though he is.
Yeah.
Native Indian, Hispanic, and author, public speaker, cannabis consultant, expert witness, libertarian writer and activist. At the age of 23, well, he had some challenges medically.
Yeah. Pheochromocytoma.
I've never heard of that. Let's look that up. Tumor. So So she worked with this man.
Yeah, I mean, she was, she was involved in her own extreme medical issues, and cannabis was helpful to her. And then she, uh, one part of her had been invited to come to Harvard and continue to study, and she preferred to become involved in cannabis research, and so went west instead of east, and had discovered that there were, that there were cannabis activists. It was back in when she was a young woman. It was not legal in Illinois, and so there was a lot of fear, and the idea of going to California where you didn't have that problem was very. Oh, we're just talking about Todd McArea and background on 215. I didn't go into all the details. I'll let you do that if you'd like.
Are you done?
Oh, we're just about done. Yeah, we're just wrapping it up.
You said that she was invited to go to Harvard.
Uh,
How does one get invited?
well, I mean, she was accepted or something.
Wow. Doctor, I'm not for sure where, what I plan on doing for my long-term schooling, but one of the things that I would like to do is finish school, but I'm definitely not going to be going back to the school where I was at before, and I probably wouldn't want to anyway. But I wouldn't mind getting a doctorate in theology. Yeah, I've been thinking about that. And a friend of mine asked, she said, "What would you do with a doctorate in theology?" And I said, "Well, I'd frame it and hang it on my wall."
Like so many other diplomas and degrees.
Yeah.
If it's in the bathroom, you can use it for toilet paper, but if it's in the living room, then you pretty much just have to look at it.
Copies of it. Yeah, I could make copies of it and use the copies for toilet paper. Well, we shouldn't joke too much. It takes quite a bit. You've dedicated, it takes a lot of dedication and hard work to graduate with um, a degree at that level. So
And it's interesting, not many people know, but like Todd McArea, I had spent 3 years in a psychiatry residency. So it's, all the psychiatrists are going into cannabis. That's, yeah,
all
really,
the psychiatrists were going into cannabis. Well, I'm wondering, I'm in the Boston area, and I'm not connected yet, networked with hardly anybody when it comes to cannabis activism, and I think it would be interesting for me over the next during this period of my time that I'm here to reach out and look into that. I think that would be worthwhile, and tell them we could send links, send video clips, and kind of talk about send out information as far as what we're doing here with the show, and yeah, that would be something that would be good.
but I have just been notified that the dinner gong has been rung, and it sounds like it's time to kind of continue to get me back to full health, and eating and a lot of fluids are primary issues.
Right, you got to take care of
So I think we
yourself,
should finish
doctor.
that.
And we got started late. So you take. Why don't you go ahead, eat, and here in a little bit we'll. You can send me an email just with the text that you're wanting to read, and I'll look over it.
Well, I did. Did I send you that text already? There were just a couple of areas of your either information or contact. There were a couple of blanks that I had in it that
I just need to fill in those
either how
couple
to reach
blanks.
you, how to reach. Yeah, I mean, you could spend forever massaging it, but I think it's better just to get it up and get it out there. You know,
Yeah, I'll
you can
just
make
give you the blanks for the contact information. That way that, when people begin to reach out, it's basically just going to be the um, the email address, and we can, yeah. So I'm gonna look that email up and send that back to you. And
because yeah, the PSA is a verbal. You record on the phone and they put it on the radio, so it's not something that has a lot of textual, numerical kind of things. It's more of go to solomonstreasure.com and there's information on how to reach people and contact people. So you're not going to be giving lots of phone numbers and generally one URL is about the limit of what you could squeeze into a 2-minute general announcement request for
we'll just go with Solomon's Treasure Podcast at Gmail, and as opposed to giving them the website. I spent last week um, building up the website and getting it somewhat situated, but I'm not a web designer by any means, and it's not set up to receive people at that level. Like if somebody was to go to the website and think, okay, well, I'm invited to be on the show, I don't have any pages that mention that, so it could be really confusing. It could be confusing quick. So we'll just give them my contact email, so that we can schedule to have them on, and just keep it at that level for now. And then as we go forward, yeah, we could always do something like that later. So
do you have a Facebook on Solomon's Treasure?
yeah, I've got a Facebook. Yeah, I've got there's a Solomon's Treasure Facebook. It's a personal page of mine. I think that I can set up maybe down the road I'm going to set up an independent page that's for the business. Yeah, but I'm thinking the best way to contact me is the email.
And these people that are going to be hearing this are people that have either been in my practice or been in the area, have heard me on the radio. So this is not a PSA to the whole planet. It's a PSA to Northern California.
Right.
And so primarily, just the fact that I'm doing something on the radio and how to kind of, the fact that it's been updated to Sunday at 1 and a place where they could go to view it is, if they wanted to view one of these, how would they do that?
We'd want to give them the YouTube channel information.
Okay, so you just figure all that stuff out and toss it in and squeeze it in there, but try to limit, like I said, not a lot of you're reading this, and so it's got to kind of flow easy. So if it's just the YouTube contact for streaming meetings every Sunday at 1, that'll give them a shot. And they always have my name and number in office, and they can call in and say, I missed that, or could you, send me an email on it or whatever. So like I said, pretty
email address, YouTube channel info where they can watch what we've already done, and where they're going to be seen.
Yeah, where every Sunday at 1, how do they join in on Sunday? The direct shot access to that.
Well, I think how do we? I know Chris Bennett. Yeah, we'll have to just think about it, and I'll shoot that over there too. You've got to eat, so.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks,
okay,
Doctor.
So
appreciate it.
You have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Goodbye.
All right. Oh. I'll be right back. Well, in the meantime, why don't I show one of these videos? Let's see here. We're going to do another video TED Talk. Here, let me get the screen share up. Surprising story of medical. We're going to search cannabis. TED Talks are fun. We'll let this one run.
When I was 33 years old, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And like so many who've gone before me, that diagnosis changed my life. It changed the way I look at the world. And it led me to two very common questions that one starts to ask when diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. How did this happen? And what do I do now? Now, this isn't a story about self-blame. These are just common and natural questions that come up for many in times like these. I actually found the questions empowering. This is actually a story about how those two questions led to a realization that I think can help change the conversation around what it means to be and stay healthy. So back to my first question, how did this happen? See, I felt like I had done everything right. What do I mean by that? Well, if I ask you, what does it mean to be healthy, to live a healthy lifestyle? What kind of answers do you get? Regular exercise, balanced diet, taking your vitamins, annual checkups, limiting toxic exposure to chemicals, personal care products. Well, by all of these accounts, I was healthy. I had done the work. So I was angry and I was frustrated that I had followed the rules and I still found myself sick. Now, I had a friend who a few years earlier had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And when it came to being healthy, she put everyone I know to shame. So I knew she would understand how I was feeling. When we got together, she told me something that would eventually change the way I think about health. She told me that her journey had taken her to a place where she believed wholeheartedly that she had not, in fact, been truly healthy. Not at a whole person level, because she had overlooked taking care of herself at the level of her thoughts and her emotions. So what she was saying had some subjective merit to me, because I can relate to suppressing my own thoughts and emotions, maybe in order to please others, or taking on the stress of trying to juggle 1,000 things. But then the pragmatist in me just wanted to brush that off as a little too woo-woo. Then again, I had, tackled all of these, and here she was standing right in front of me, the picture of health and vitality. So what could it hurt to look into this a little further? So down I went through rabbit hole number 1, mind-body medicine. And for those of you who don't know, mind-body medicine studies how our mind, mood, thoughts, and emotions affect our body. So that would be things like stress management, stress reduction, like going for a walk in nature, unplugging from technology, getting a massage, meditation, mindful breath work, and thought and belief awareness. So this could be something as simple as being more mindful of our thoughts, or something more concrete like cognitive behavioral therapy, where you become actively aware of your thoughts and behaviors and then replace them with more positive alternatives that in turn elicit more positive emotions. I also started delving in to stories that highlight the mind's ability to affect the body, like the peer-reviewed account documented by Dr. Klopner in 1959 about a man who he called Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright was diagnosed with terminal cancer and given only days to live. With tumors the size of oranges, he had heard of a horse serum that was said to be effective against cancer, and he begged to receive it. His physician, Dr. Philip West, reluctantly agreed, but was astonished to find, less than a week later, his patient was out of his deathbed and joking with his nurses. Now, this went on for months, until Mr. Wright read a newspaper article stating that the serum was a quack remedy, and he suffered an immediate relapse. Now, Dr. West, testing out a hypothesis, said, well, don't believe everything you read in the papers. And then he proceeded to inject him with what he said was a super refined, double-strength version of the drug. Really, it was water. But again, the tumors melted away. Mr. Wright was a picture of health and vitality for another 2 months until he read what he felt was a definitive report stating that the serum was worthless, and he died days later. Now, this is just one of thousands and thousands of examples that highlight how the mind can affect the body. And so I had my anecdotal evidence, which included the example of my own friend. And I'd like to say that I took what I learned and put it into practice and lived happily ever after. Of course, that's not what happened. And I don't think I'm alone in that, because many of us hear about how stress and emotions can affect our health and how mindfulness, meditation can make a difference in our lives and all of that, but many of us also don't do anything about it. I have the stories and the theories, but what I really needed was hard evidence, science to prove that it was true. I mean, we've all grown up in a world of, Newtonian science-based thinking, meaning if we can't see it or measure it, then it's not real. So I, like maybe many of you, didn't start to put these ideas into practice just yet. What I did, and this is now getting into the second of the two questions that I alluded to earlier, the what do I do now? What I did is I started using medical cannabis at the recommendation of my nurse and other patients. And it helped immensely with pain and nausea and anxiety and all of the really fun stuff that can come along with cancer treatment. I also started joining online medical cannabis user communities, and I was in awe at the spectrum of issues that cannabis was helping with. Intractable illnesses that weren't responding to other forms of treatment, like MS, fibromyalgia, PTSD, Tourette's syndrome, IBS, epilepsy, chronic pain, autoimmune diseases. I could keep going. The list goes on. But I started to wonder, how was it that cannabis was helping with all of these unrelated conditions? Because I can't think of another medication out there that would be able to help with so many illnesses. So how did it work? Well, down I went through rabbit hole number 2, and this was a deep hole. In a nutshell, I learned that the reason that cannabis was working for so many different conditions is because it interacts directly with our body's own endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is a little known but massive bodily system responsible for maintaining homeostasis, that's balance, in the body. It consists of a network of neurotransmitters called endocannabinoids, as well as receptor sites, most well known being the CB1 and CB2 receptors, and enzymes. Think of it kind of like the traffic lights of a city, keeping the streets moving smoothly. But if a light goes out anywhere, it'll cause problems, congestion, confusion. Cars and people will keep moving, but without the guidance and the rules, the flow just won't be as efficient and far more susceptible to accidents. It's actually been called the most prolific and integrative system in human health and homeostasis, and even dubbed our body's own master system because of its role in maintaining balance among all the other systems of the body. Now, this is important because all illness can essentially be boiled down to some sort of imbalance in the body, whether genetically induced or otherwise. Now, if you haven't heard of this system before, you're not alone. And if you are hearing about it for the first time, you may be wondering why on earth you haven't heard of this ethically important system until now. And it's partly because it's newly discovered in around the 1980s, but also partly because of the stigma around cannabis for which the system is named. Because scientists discovered this system when they were trying to answer that same question, how does cannabis work? So they learned that compounds in the cannabis plant called phytocannabinoids actually fit near perfectly with the receptor sites of the endocannabinoid system. So used properly, this plant can help to activate, tone, and support the endocannabinoid system when it's out of balance. So it's a pretty amazing plant. To say I became obsessed with cannabis and the endocannabinoid system is an understatement. I buried myself in research papers, lectures, courses, certifications, learning everything I could about cannabis, as well as ways to keep the endocannabinoid system itself healthy and balanced. Because while it's easy to say, wow, look at this amazing plant that we have, it's able to help with all these chronic conditions and balance the body. And obviously I believe that I've dedicated part of my life to spreading the message that cannabis is medicine. But it's equally important to look beyond cannabis as a single cure. Because when you look closer, you'll see that cannabis is an important ally, but it's only part of the puzzle. So let's use that example again as the endocannabinoid system and the traffic lights. Except for in this scenario, cannabis is like the friendly police officer that comes in to direct traffic when the lights are out. So the officer's doing their best, and certainly it's helping to keep the traffic moving in a more organized manner, but we still have to figure out, or at least try to figure out, how to fix the lights. So how do we go about fixing the lights? How do we support and heal the endocannabinoid system when it's out of balance? Well, it just so happens that one review study in particular looked at 325 other studies that all focused on what helped and hindered the endocannabinoid system by focusing on key endocannabinoid health factors. And here's what they learned directly affect the system. Exercise, and notice I wrote pleasurable exercise there. It has to be something that you enjoy doing. Okay. Diet and supplements. So a couple examples that I'll give you. Herbs and spices contain small amounts of phytocannabinoids, the same compound that cannabis contains. And certain healthy fats can actually help your body to synthesize its own endocannabinoids. Environmental exposures. So some pesticides will actually downregulate the endocannabinoid system, have a direct effect with it. And there are a few others that I'm going to share with you, but before I do, I just want to bring your attention to a sentence that really jumped out at me when I was reading this study. It said that the endocannabinoid system represents a microcosm of psychoneuroimmunology. And I had to look that last word up, so in case some of you guys don't know, I'm going to break it down for you. Psychoneuroimmunology is the study of the interaction between the psychological processes, the mind, and the systems of the body, the body. So really it's just a fancy way of saying that metaphorically speaking, the endocannabinoid system represents a microcosm of mind, body, medicine. And so now hopefully you can see where this is all coming full circle and coming together, I hope. Because here's what else was shown to affect the endocannabinoid system. Chronic stress. So they looked at stress from pain as well as stress from thoughts and emotions, so repeated feelings of anger, guilt, depression, something that is chronic means more long-term. That was shown to significantly impact the endocannabinoid system. And activities that elicit the relaxation response. So that would be, again, kind of that walk in nature, doing some yoga, getting a massage. They consider osteopathic manipulation in that study. So why does this matter? Well, I said before that we live in a physical world, so for many of us, if we can't see it and measure it, then it's not real. I told you about how I had heard stories about how the mind can affect the body, but I still didn't give it the same weight that I would give to nutrition and movement and medicine. But when I understood that my own endocannabinoid system, my master system for maintaining health and homeostasis, required me to start taking care of my thoughts, my emotions, my stress, my beliefs, it finally clicked for me. So I want to leave you with a scenario to imagine. An idea of how this information can help to change the conversation around health, like I said in the beginning. Imagine if the message that we heard from our physicians and public health officials sounded like this. Listen, what if I told you that there's this really important bodily system? Call it a master system. And if you can keep it functioning well, it can do wonders in allowing your body to innately keep itself healthy, heal itself, and improve the quality of life for those with biological and genetic illnesses. If I told you there was a system like that, would you want to know how to keep it strong and healthy? And I think most would answer yes to that. And then they would go on to say, great, so think of this system like a stool. Each of the legs represents all that's required to keep the system functioning well. And here's why we compare it to a stool. Each of those legs is an integral part of keeping that stool stable and balanced. If we remove a leg or even shorten a leg, the whole stool starts to wobble and become less efficient, less stable, less balanced. So let's design a plan for you that incorporates all of these concepts as part of a healthy lifestyle. Imagine Not only is that proactive, but it's empowering. And I invite all of you to consider where your stool is wobbling. It's been said that mindfulness could be the next great public health revolution. I believe it's only a matter of time before mindfulness, stress reduction, thought belief awareness is every bit as important as seeing your doctor, taking your vitamins, eating a balanced diet, and getting regular exercise. And maybe the endocannabinoid system can help to catalyze that. It's my hope that the more we understand the ramifications of this master system, the more we may be willing to develop a truly integrated approach to whole person health. Who would have thought that cannabis, the gateway drug, could actually help to form part of the gateway to the next great public health revolution? Thank you.
Dove Advanced Care's new formula, enriched with 1/4 moisturizers with natural oil, leaves underarms feeling healthy and protected, and you more confident and carefree. Effective protection, kind skin.
What goes through your mind when I tell you that my 11-year-old twins are using marijuana? Do you think to yourselves, oh my God, the drug problem in the U.S. is worse than I thought? How is it possible that 11-year-olds get access to pot? Maybe some of you thought, geez, I wonder what medical condition these kids have. The truth of the matter is, most of us don't think about medicine when we hear the word marijuana. I admit, I'm embarrassed to admit, that up until 2 years ago, I was completely misinformed about marijuana. And I think many of our population is today. I remember vividly in 6th grade being ushered into the auditorium to see a government-sponsored documentary about marijuana. It was the most scary thing I'd ever watched. People jumping off buildings, car crashes, it was mayhem. But not once was there a mention of the possibility that cannabis was useful as medicine. To be honest, in retrospect, I'm a little angry about the propaganda that our government is putting forth. It's even happening today. My big idea worth sharing is that medicinal cannabis can be the healthcare success story of our lifetimes, but only if we all engage in learning the truth and ask our federal government to end prohibition of cannabis. I'd like to introduce you to my twins, Addison and Cassidy. Believe it or not, today's their birthday. 11 years ago today, only a mile from here, they were born and came into our lives. Happiest day of my life. I love the date too. January 23rd, 2004. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unfortunately, Addie and Cassie suffer from a very rare genetic disorder called Niemann-Pick type C. This horrible disease is more commonly called, or what we call it, is childhood Alzheimer's. Their little brains are drowning in cholesterol. They're missing a protein that allows them to process cholesterol both in and out of their brain cells. The cause is neurodegeneration. They can no longer walk, and they can no longer talk. We were told that Addie and Cassie would be lucky to see their 12th birthday. After reeling with this devastating diagnosis, my wife and I dedicated ourselves to finding treatments for our twins in their lifetime. We gave up successful high-tech careers in Silicon Valley, and we became research philanthropists raising money for research. And ultimately, we became biotechnology entrepreneurs developing a compound. The compound we found was cyclodextrin, and we found it with the help of an amazing group of scientists, researchers, and physicians from all over the world, including right here in Reno. Every week, the girls get an infusion. It's 8 hours long. It goes into their bloodstream, the cyclodextrin. Every other week, like yesterday, the girls go to the hospital and they get a lumbar puncture in their spine in order to get the cyclodextrin to reach their brains directly. We think that the combination of those two routes of administration are slowing down the neurodegenerative progression and hopefully maybe even stopping it. Addie and Cassie were the first little pioneers to try this scary treatment. I can tell you as a parent, with no one in front of you paving the way, it truly is a scary moment. Thankfully, more than a couple dozen kids around the world, including a few at the NIH, are now engaged in further science and research on this experimental treatment. But the treatment doesn't seem to help with their seizures. As a result of the neurodegeneration, my kids have seizures almost daily. A couple years ago, they were way more than daily. There were many a day. We started giving the kids traditional pharmaceutical medicines for their seizures. And they worked, some of them worked, some of them didn't work. But the big problem was most seizure drugs cause your kids to become zombies. The whole purpose of the drugs is to essentially take away the stress or the triggers that cause seizures. We had heard about a father in California that was treating a young son who was intractable seizures, seizing constantly all day long. And he was using cannabis medicine. We became interested. We contacted him. We learned more about the drug. Ultimately, we decided to pursue cannabis in earnest. Did you know that the cannabis plant was used as early as 2900 BC in China as medicine? Did you know that we in America were using, in the 1800s, for a century, we were using cannabis to treat a number of afflictions? Unfortunately, in the early 1900s, as you all probably know, cannabis was prohibited and subsequently demonized and turned into a war. It's a shame. It truly is a shame. But we became convinced that the oil would work. So we set out to find a supply of oil. Certainly, cannabis has been legal in the great state of Nevada for almost a decade. Surely we could just go out and buy some oil and give it to our kids. Not true. There was no oil available in our great state. So we set out to do it ourselves. First, we got physician approval to do the treatment of cannabis, and then we became caregivers, licensed caregivers in the state of Nevada, which allows us to cultivate and make extractions, oils from the cannabis plant to give to our kids. Every day, 3 times a day, the girls get a little oil like what you see here. This oil is extracted from a very special cannabis plant that's high in cannabidiol, or CBD as we call it. Unfortunately, this oil by itself doesn't even completely, for our children, stop their seizures. So we still use a small amount of pharmaceutical medicine, but we use less. We've reduced the number of drugs the kids take, and we reduced the amount of dose from the few drugs we do give them. And consequently, our kids are not only having fewer seizures and shorter seizures, they're also bright-eyed and happy children again. They're no longer little zombies. This was great progress, but I thought to myself, holy cow, there are 2 million epilepsy or seizure disorder sufferers in the United States. Who's going to help those folks, those kids, those adults with these disorders? And at that moment, we decided to take what we had learned for our children and turn it into a commercial business here in the state of Nevada, which was just preparing to allow that to happen. And as Kylie mentioned, we've endeavored to do so and are now licensed to grow, extract, and sell, dispense cannabis here in Nevada, the state of Nevada. Someday, the federal government will end prohibition. But how many lives will be lost potentially or severely affected in the meantime? How many kids with seizures like mine will move their families, will uproot from their homes to move to Colorado or Nevada to get these medicines? How many cancer patients will be denied access to inexpensive and effective medicine to treat the side effects like pain and nausea that come with chemotherapy? There is a groundswell of folks like me who understand the potential of cannabis, and I'm grateful for that. The ironic thing is some of my family and friends, including most particularly my own mother, are still not convinced. My mother is worried that the free access to cannabis is actually a threat to society, and that perhaps the medicinal value doesn't outweigh that threat. And she sees the medicinal value in her grandchildren. The problem, I think, is that really we just don't have enough hard evidence yet to convince the skeptics. There just isn't enough science and research to back the foundation that the medicine's working, the medicine's effective, that it's useful for large populations of people. That's not to say that research doesn't exist. There's a mountain of evidence that the cannabis plant is useful. But there's not a lot of clinical science, hard clinical science to that effect. That's the conundrum. That's the chicken and egg problem. Until the federal prohibition of cannabis ends, until we take cannabis off the schedule of harmful drugs like LSD and methamphetamines that have no medicinal value, until we remove cannabis from that list, which is insane that it's on that list to begin with, until we remove it from that list, research can't take place. If I came to the University of Nevada, Reno Medical Center tomorrow with $1 million grant to study cannabis, I would likely not have success. It's not that the scientists don't want to study the plant, it's that they are fearful of losing federal funding. It's because they'd have to deal with the DEA and other regulatory agencies at the federal level, which is a complex and expensive process. This is one of the many tentacles of the prohibition of cannabis that actually prohibits us from moving forward. My own personal experience with cannabis, along with the evidence, the science that I know about, makes me absolutely certain of what I shared with you earlier. Cannabis has the potential to become the big healthcare success story of our lifetimes, but only if we allow it. Here adding Cassie in a more recent picture. For those of you who are still skeptical, perhaps for those of you like my mother who still worry about the societal downside of cannabis, I ask you to look at this picture and consider the following. By limiting access to cannabis for parents like myself, you're forcing me to make a decision between the lives or well-being of my children and going to jail. How is that a fair or rational set of thinking in modern society? Our 16th president, the famous 16th president, had very strong feelings about this subject. He said prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason and that it attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes a crime out of things that aren't crimes. A prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded. This was Abraham Lincoln. And he said these words before we had the experiences we had with alcohol prohibition or with cannabis prohibition. Someday the federal government will spend the money on research. Someday the NIH will actually be actively pursuing cannabis as a treatment. Until that day comes, a large group of us have come together and formed a nonprofit to organize and fund clinical research in cannabis in the private sector until we can use the academic institutions. We call the foundation People Can in honor of advocates like myself who over the last several decades have been saying what I'm now saying and whose words I didn't listen to until my own situation demanded it. Never in her wildest imagination, would my wife have thought that today she would be a cannabis advocate. She was also misinformed, let's say.
I was watching this downstairs, and then it said that the stream is unavailable, stream suspended for, policy violations. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, because this is being recorded secondarily through the computer. I'm going to continue playing this until it's over, And then if I have to re-upload this video, then I'll try that.
About the plant until we needed to learn. Neither my wife nor I would ever believe that our young children would become the next generation of cannabis advocates. I'd like you to meet them. Please give a birthday welcome to my wife, Chris, and my daughters, Patty and Cassia.
Here I have a bottle of
Would it
oil.
be unkind to ask if we could sing happy birthday?
It was made
Happy
from
birthday
hemp flower.
to you.
Hemp flowers.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh man.
Happy birthday, dear Cassie. Happy birthday to you. Yay! Good girl.
Oh. All right. There's just one after another. Let's stop here. Stop. All right, it says that my live stream had been ended. It says stream unavailable. Your stream has temporarily been blocked because we detected copyrighted audio. And video. Okay, so let's go back to the TED. Look at this. YouTube. Copyrighted. Maybe there's something I don't understand. Well, our TED Talk's copyrighted. I guess I gotta figure out here. Could have been the music that had played in the background, but the music is in public domain. Okay. Oh, it shows that it's back up now. Stream came back up. Yeah, I think it's the TED Talks. So that's good. And well, it was a beautiful TED Talk, and I'm seeing here that their usage policy You can't use it for any commercial purposes. Can't edit, remix, create derivative works of, modify, or alter the form. And maybe that voiceover. Yeah, I'm basically doing a live voiceover. In a way, I'm doing kind of what a voiceover would be. In a commercial context, requires a license. Not use, well, so there's a lot being said here. So commercial applications require license, nonprofit, they're allowed. If you are a for-profit company seeking to podcast or online virtual course, please check if your company's business matches with one or more of the categories listed below, as a formal distribution partnership with TED is required. To submit an inquiry, please fill out this form. Okay, so looks like I would have to this is probably what I would need to do right here. A media licensing request form. Non-commercial usage. If you're for profit, which this would be more of what we're categorized at the moment. I mean, it's a for-profit entity owns the is paying for the Zoom Pro. Okay, so I have to complete this form. Let's stop share. Well, I'll come back to that. What organization do you represent? Okay, so I got to fill this out for TED, and on the website, I don't have anything as far as a page that shows the podcast, and I probably could. Here's my designer program. I can add a page. That shows a podcast, and then I could just, in order to make it more appropriate for the time being, maybe it would be best to only allow the videos that are from the Cannabis Library episode. The Prospector Library TV only had one. I'm very busy on Wednesday nights, and scheduling, I try to push myself to the limit, but I think I may have overloaded myself, which it's a pretty common thing for me to do. But I could create a page, and it would be a podcast page. And then when I make the request, that'll give me an opportunity to, when I make the request, I want to have stuff that's in here that gives short description, and that needs to match, obviously, with the information here, if there's any, and the type of content. I'm looking at TED Talks video. How many TED content assets are you requesting? Maybe 10 to 50. I'm thinking, I don't think that there's many more cannabis ones, but I would like to be able to share as part of this library. I'm very much impressed with the professionalism and the power, the impact that TED Talks have, especially after that last tearjerker, especially even more so. I've watched dozens of TED Talks over the past couple years, and Yeah. So I can get to work on this. And I want to show I need to finish the script for the doctor. The children will also be back soon, wife and kids. Processing speed is somewhat good. I have some text already written regarding the podcast details. Some of that description script is written in the Facebook page. Oh, here's some of the stuff. You'll find one thing that's very common when you look into what I do, what I've done, how I do things. So I share quite a bit, but what I share is where I'm at. And where I'm at right now compared to where I'm going to be, or the person who I am, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 days, 30 days, 10 years, 30 years from now. It's not the same growth. So like the website, this is what I thought that I was going to have. And this is where I'm at right now. It's very different, but I had set up all of this. I had to do. I have about maybe close to 30 hours so far on the website. And if you look in here, you can see some of the images that I thought that I would have. I was going to have somebody else do the website. Down here, there's some text. It's supposed to be a GIF, but okay. So, broadcasted shows. Okay, so Solomon'sTreasure.org has a page with downloadable links. Should really say is to have or will have, may have. Might receive. That would have been better. Yeah, so we want to be able to have that downloadable link. What was I thinking before? Uploading the audios, uploading the videos. The videos are on the YouTube channel. And how is that going to be hosted? Well, the audio can be hosted possibly can be hosted right now with the Google Drive for a short period of time. But down the road, there are podcast host companies, sites that do that. And then, of course, on the page that I'm creating here for the podcast, there would be links. So we need to have links to download audio. I can put up a video that shows how to download. I can create a video using my program and put that on the page that gives instructions. The video will be an instructional video on how to download a YouTube video. There's multiple ways to do it. But yeah, I want to make a breakdown video, put that up there on the site. Yeah, so we'd want to have links to download the audio, and then we need to have how-to videos. Download YouTube videos. I don't know if YouTube will keep that up for long. I know that they are making money on the they're attempting to, and they probably are making money on allowing people to have a premium subscription, which allows them, from what I see on my phone, it will allow me to download if I join in with a premium subscription. So, and I know that the program here that I use, and I'll show here, the clip grab. This is what I use to download videos from YouTube and Facebook Live. And my computer my Firefox also has an add-on that allows me at times to directly download. There's a couple different ways that you can download videos off YouTube. What maybe I'll do is I will just find some videos that are already made and put up some links from other YouTube channels. I think that would be the best. There's people who've done a better job than me. And so we'll have that. We'll see what YouTube is already allowed and what they won't. So I need to put up 2 to 3 how-to videos. Good. Audio links. I have audio here. We can see how large this file is. This is the clip grab. I'll show you that in a second. Here we go. So audio only. This was episode number 4. Wait, how is this episode number 4? Did it stop? Let's see what happens when I stop share. Shows that it's still recording. Oh, that was the first one, maybe, because I think that there was 2. Let's see here what we've got. Stop video, start video, screen share, share. Let's see what happens if I play this in the VLC player.
I have been super busy with getting this business ready and launching.
This is the
and
last
I'm
one.
ready to go.
Yeah, this was, so this here, this file, well, let me see how many minutes this is, because I can do a calculation on the size that we'll end up having open with VLC. Could do the math.
I have been super busy.
That's when I started. So this is a minute. Let's do a minute 30. And so the audio is a minute 30. Wait, I don't want to do that. I just want to. Let's open it with VLC.
I have been super busy
Yeah, there's the audio.
with getting
26
this
seconds.
business ready and launching. And
Audio only. What size are you? Okay, so it's about a megabyte per minute. All right, because we've got 1.3 megabyte and it's 1 minute 26 second. Well, no, it's going to be different, because that would mean that it's 1.5. It's closer to 1.5 if it was 1 megabyte per minute. So it's under a megabyte per minute. Let's say it's under 2/10. So 9.9, approximately 0.9 megabytes for every minute of audio. That's just some rough math. My head could be off, but I might not be. I might be right on. 0.9 megabyte. No, I am way off. Here's why. We're just going to go with it. It's going to be a rough guesstimate. Then I can figure how many I could host. Because I'm wanting to solve the problem, how am I going to host these downloadable links? And one way I can do that, which is my easiest way, and it's not going to cost me any money, is that I have 15. I think my Google Drive for the Solomon's Treasure podcast is a certain size. So what I could, the idea would be upload each audio file and have that on my Google Drive for the Solomon's Treasure podcast at Gmail account, and then allow that to be shared, put that in the link, copy the link, put the link on the website. Boom, there's the audio. You want to listen to the audio, you want to download it, click the link, and you download it directly from the podcast Google Drive. So that's option one. Option two, which we definitely have to have down the road, is an actual, well, we'd have to have more space if we want to host it ourselves. So we'd have to solve that problem. One of the ways that we could solve that problem is through a third-party host site. So how-to videos, download. Let's get to that after we finish our calculations here. We're looking at maybe a 0.9 megabyte for 1 minute of audio. So let's do the math on that. 3 hours is 180 minutes. 180 minutes, 3 hours. We'd be looking at about 100 and, let's see, 18 would be a tenth. 162 megabytes. Yes, that's 162 megabytes would be 3 hours. That's an approximation. If my 0.9 megabyte, that's going off of 0.9 megabyte for just 1 minute. All right. So 162 megabytes, one episode. And that means we would have, that's a 3 hour. So let's just say that each episode, maximum, we're going to have 200 megabytes. That means we can have five episodes within 1 gigabyte. And I think my Google Drive, let's check it, but I think it allows me to have 15 gigabytes. And if that's the case, multiply 15 times 5, we're looking at 30, 60, 75 episodes of just audio hosting that I can put on the show. That's 75 weeks. That gives us more than a year. Yeah. Yeah, I think we can handle that, hosting it ourselves through the Google Drive if I have 15 gigabytes. So let's take a look. 15 gigabytes. I'm going to go to the email address. Email. Yes, so. Solomon's Treasure Podcast at Gmail. Where's my drive? Google Apps. Okay. So it shows that I have automatically uploaded and that my 15 gigabytes, good, so 15 gigabytes is good. So if we go with just audio, we get rid of these video, then we'll be good to go. Now, which drive is this? Is this the STPodcast drive? Or my personal drive? I think it might be the podcast one. Wow, 100 gigabytes. 200 gigabytes for $3 a month. Yeah, hosting is going to be a lot easier, I think. But I just want to double check to make sure that this is the same account. Let's go over here into mine, and then I will go into the Google Drive on my personal. Does that, yes. So yeah, this is my personal. Good, I'm full there, which means let's close this. Let's close this. Let's go to, let's close this. Go to my drive, and I'm going to get rid of all of the video. New, my drive. Quick access, my drive trash is changing. I don't need to know that. I want to delete. So I guess right click. Remove. Okay. So I think what's happening is the Zoom is automatically uploading them to the Google Drive, so I have to turn that off because I haven't been adding these. Remove. That one I uploaded. That was a young student interviewing me for one of her assignments, psychology class, writing class. She's a psychology student. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. It says I'm still full. Huh, how do I still get so full? From audios? What is up with this here? How is that possible? Remove, download, view details. How big is that file? It's 100 megabyte. That's not filling up my storage. Let's go over here. What is going on here? I have 3 files and my storage is full. What does this thing need to be refreshed? Let's close out maybe. Come back. Maybe. How could it be full so quick? Let's see here. Still shows 96% is used. But it's only got 3 files here that don't even total up a gigabyte, and it shows that I've got 14.5 gigabytes of my 15 used up. Well, that doesn't make much sense, does it? My drive. I mean, I could get rid of all of these, and maybe I could get rid of all of them, and it would. It seems like maybe it would still show, but I want to go back in and see what audios I've got up. So let me try signing in here and see what happens. Doesn't show the option here. Google Drive. Okay, that's the podcast Google Drive. Good. So now it shows I've got 3 files in here, and it shows my memory's full. Settings. How is it that these 3 small files are using up? I'm gonna have to send them contact Google and ask them. I wonder how big those it has to be, because it's just not updated. There's just no, maybe some type of refreshing, because there's just no way. Let's contact them, and I'll probably have to do a little bit more later, coming up on 3 hours. I got a few more minutes I can go. Kids are still out of the home with mom and grandma. So I want to contact them. Let's try that. Let's view the item. There we go. It has to be that it's just not refreshed or something. Recent trash, storage. I don't see where it shows. Oh, this is the question mark. Help. Maybe they have live chat. Maybe it's in the trash. Maybe I need to remove the trash can. Yes. Empty the trash can. Delete forever. Didn't change it to 14.5. Still at 14.5. Still at 14.5. Okay, so that didn't do it. Emptying out the trash can. Upload files and folders to Google Drive. Browse all articles. Help. Contact us. Email. Visit help forum. Browse all articles. Which one do I want to go into and why? Manage files. I want to empty the Google One Storage Manager. Options, delete hidden app data. Well, here we go. Now we're good. Okay, so yeah, I didn't need to refresh. We're free of that. Now we have to go to our settings. Yeah, it just needed to refresh. Good. We need to go to our settings on our Zoom account. Doesn't give me the option here to I don't want it to save directly to my drive when I finish a video, and for some reason it's doing that. I guess maybe I can manually go in and remove them every time. So what I need to do is I need to gather the audio for files episode 1 through 4. And then I want to show, that's one task. These are tasks. Second task is I need to do the website designing page for quote unquote podcast. That's going to need to include info and directory. It's going to need to have the links for audio files. I think we might be able to show links that will take people directly to, well, what I can do on my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel, I can organize, and what I can do with the Cannabis Library TV is put them all into one series / section, categorize, and begin to make a distinction between the series shows and the regular podcast. And on the website, we're going to make sure we show that there's a difference. Which takes me back to what we were reading here. Might receive a page. Let's go ahead and put will. One, two, three, four. Will receive a page. And that's going to be with Google Drive. Down here, yeah, free, openly available, public domain, community domain. let's see, how did the TED mention it? Creative Commons license attribution. So I basically with the podcast, in a way, I would somewhat have to do something similar. Like there's the option to, it seems as though this would be a good route to go. In a way, just copying what TED Talks is doing for a media licensing request form, so that our podcast, if it's a nonprofit or bloggers, news media, non-commercial usage, Creative Commons license attribution, non-commercial, non-derivative. Yeah. So I want to organize the library, public domain. Another word is Creative Commons license attribution, Creative Commons. Downloadable resources of invaluable industry, leading industry knowledge, invaluable leading industry knowledge. I guess I could edit that now. Well, I got rid of my green background, but anyway, online network library archive channel resource collection of original series shows, which are filmed live streamed on our YouTube channel through the Zoom platform. Yeah, I need to get a hold of Eric. Going back and looking at a couple of the options I had for raising funds. This was quite the effort I've had to put in. Yeah, so that shows a little bit of the text that we might be able to use. Online network library. Yeah, so quite a bit of work. I bite off sometimes more than I can chew. But, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We are still live streaming. And let's come on over here. The podcast. Let's change that to the Solomon's Treasure podcast. Podcats. We have Podcats. That's a horrible subtitle. Wait a minute. Where did the... Oh, there we go. Come on over here. Online library archive. Online library archive resource. Get rid of network and channel. I think I'm gonna go get me some more coffee. I guess the kids are probably they're probably eating some lunch. Online library archive resource. We don't need collection. Archive means collection. A lot of times I do things repetitively without necessarily thinking. But I use these online social media platforms to post rough drafts of information, which I think helps long-term document and show the story and the history for anybody that wants to spend the time to look it up. Online library archive resource of originally I don't even need that word either. Two-hour. Through the Zoom Pro platform. Paragraph. downloadable links. Airing weekly. Okay. There might have been other script text that's been written down. No, I don't think I have anything script written. This is an older notebook. Okay, so we'll just write this out right now. Write this out right. Well, I am going to have these things finished tonight. This page is moving forward. Read this email from the other day. So I'm reading over this email from Kristen, and I'm thinking to myself, I need to hire somebody to handle this stuff, as far as how to set up and oversee and maintain. The amount of time that I spend I think that I can be more valuable with the COVID busters, focusing my attention on the COVID busters, bringing in income and delegating these tasks and roles to a media person that would be in charge of being the tech guy. You know, Joe Rogan has his Jamie, Gary Vaynerchuk has his D-Rock, and I'm going to have to find somebody who's going to be able to help with these things. Somebody who's better, way better than me. We're going to remove all of this right here. Need a bio on Dr. William. Let's go straight to Cannabis International.
My name is Dr. William Courtney.
We want to video. Replace. YouTube.
I'm involved in the raw use of cannabis that help our body's regulatory system be more effective. Bottom line is it's a dietary essential that helps all 210 cell types function more effectively. And so I never even refer to it as medicine anymore. Strictly as a dietary essential. It only becomes medicine once you have a breakdown in a condition that's become very serious in the system, your body's being overwhelmed. Then cannabis can be manipulated, i.e. heated.
You see the clip grab. The minute I cut and added to the clipboard, the computer automatically adds the
I think
clip
cannabis is a medicine
to the clipboard.
That is, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant,
and so the clip grab automatically pops up. So that's one of the things that I mentioned to be able to download off the website here. There's going to be instructions for how to do that. There's the YouTube video. No, let's see. Should just be. I don't want to search videos. I just want to go ahead and add it. Close that. What happened here? Replace this video. Edit this video. Edit the video. There we go. Paste. Don't need this desktop stuff. I think we can go to let's see here. Back to Cannabis International. Let's go to watch the video. And Where did it go? Watch the video. I don't know why it wants to bring up
My
all
name
those
is
links.
Dr. William Courtney. I'm involved.
Does it need it? It says app desktop. I want to limit it to that. What happens if I just go with it has 35,000 views. Well, I just need to. I'm not convinced yet. There's something that doesn't add up. I don't need to have all. I just need it to stop. I believe. Right. Let's see what happens if I just back this up. See what happens if I do that. Okay. How about if I put the O after it?
My name is Dr. William Courtney.
All right.
I'm involved in
go with
the
it.
raw use of cannabis as a
Cut it.
dietary essential. In that capacity, you can use 60.
Paste. Just go with it. Share app desktop. I'll play loop video. I'll play the video. Fine. Let's see what happens. Let's edit here some more text. Cannabis International. Get some more come stay with us. I need some about information. Let's go to the welcome page. I'm just going to go with this. Is that going to be, wait a minute here. www.cannabisinternational.org. It brings up this WordPress thing. I'll just go ahead and copy all that. I'm going to add that in. I wonder why the person can't just go www.cannabisinternational.org for the text. I mean, it shows, oh, here's an about. They back. Hello. Dig. Okay. Okay.